I felt like I had finally been somewhat successful. Like I went years of being, you know, an entrepreneur with having very limited success, right? Not a great success with the sports store. You know, me and Bill had tried a whole bunch of different festivals, and again to varying degrees of success, but not. So when I finally, you know, here I find myself, I'm married. I have kids. I have 2 kids. You know, we had a house. We had vehicles. We have. And like I wasn't happy myself for some reason, and so for me I really needed to like figure out why that was, right?
Welcome to the Calgary Sessions. This is episode number 107. I'm your host, Jeff Humphreys. Today's guest, finally we get to flip the script because, I finally get to put him in the hot seat because this is usually not his spot. So name and who you are.
My name is Mark Kondrat. I am with Alberta Beer Festivals, and I do a couple of podcasts. So one is Let's Meet for a Beer, and the other is Explore 84.
So it's like and you're like deep into your podcast career, right? How many have you shot?
I'm deep in / still very much kind of like an enthusiast, hobbyist. I've probably done like 300-400 since I started, but it's for me up until recently, it's just been a real, you know, personal experiment, and so now I'm trying to grow it. I mean, obviously, like to be honest, inspired by people like you to just kind of like take it to the next level. Yeah.
It's been fun because I feel the same way. Just like when you find like-minded people doing the same thing in the same space, you can do one of two things. And you can either like hide and pretend they're not there, or the same way you've built your the beer festivals, you can kind of just like, if there's alignment, stick together.
Yeah, 100%. I think, and that's just easier. It's a more sustainable model to kind of, if you see alignment. I think, some people just by nature have a competitive aspect, and then other people are more collaborative. And I think for me, although I can be competitive in certain things, it's why I'm not allowed to play hockey anymore. But you know, for me, with business has always been a collaborative venture. The more that you can collaborate with people and focus on what you have in common, the more successful you'll be. So I know, like when Terry Andreo introduced the two of us, you know, and because he has that mindset as well, right? Is very collaborative, and so that's, you know, to me just makes more sense. So as soon as I met you, and I know I was talking to someone else about you.
Tim?
No, it was Ryan Pinder.
Oh yeah.
And he, right after him and I sat and had a coffee together one day, and he told me that I should reach out to you because he saw a lot of similarities between you and me. So
have you always thought that about like in business where it's better to not do it by yourself, but actually like find like-minded people and create community?
I don't know if I've always thought that, but I've always experienced. So I guess I was influenced that way, and so as soon as I graduated university and moved back to Calgary, everybody that I met, I was lucky enough they were very collaborative. So like one of the first festivals that me and my one partner Bill started was the Inglewood Sunfest, which was, I think they still do the Sunfest down in Inglewood, but it was by design collaborative. Like we had to bring all the local businesses in. And that was the first time that I ever met my friend, Tom Stewart. He was with Big Rock at the time and one of the founders of Village. And, from the second we met each other, that was just his mantra was, how do we help, build the community? And he was just so authentic with that. And so over the years, I became friends and business partners with people that just had that spirit. So, and I saw it as easier than, like I said, than competing. It's just and it's more, it's a more sustainable model as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. It makes sense. It's just such a, those people that don't think like that, right? They're just very siloed and the energy's different.
Yeah. It's, and maybe it's just that what they do is more specialized. I don't know. Like there's probably certain areas where there is more of a, if he's winning, I'm losing. Maybe that's true in some industries. It's just in everything that I've been a part of, it hasn't been the case. It's always been of more benefit for everybody if we do work together. So, and it also is more fun that way.
Yeah,
so,
for sure.
Yeah.
So the gist of the show is I like the guests to kind of, you and I we'll go on all sorts of tangents, which is awesome. But I like the guests to go back as far as they want to go, how they grew up, where they grew up, what influences they had, whether it's friends, parents, siblings. So take it back as far as you want to go, and then we'll kind of weave a path to where you are today.
So I grew up in Red Deer, Alberta, so an hour and a half north of here. Big family, so 5 brothers and sisters. So I was I'm the youngest. I have a half sister that's younger than me, but in our immediate family, I'm the youngest. So I don't know. I guess a psychologist would analyze me and say I am the way I am because of being the youngest of a big family. My parents divorced when I was quite young, but I've always been close with them. And so my dad, from my earliest memories, lived in Calgary, so I've always been very connected to Calgary. I've always loved Calgary. I went to U of C before I went to U of A. I grew up playing hockey, just very much, with my older brothers, just kind of that the kid that tags along with everything. And people joke about growing up in the 80s and 90s, and there was, I think, less supervision back then. So you kind of just, you just grew up in that way and very independent. So that's just always been my mentality. And so graduated from business school at University of Alberta, and always just wanted to be an entrepreneur.
Always, you knew that?
No, I guess I didn't. I never knew what I wanted to be, and so I was never driven to necessarily work for a big company. It wasn't. I had friends who would be, they wanted to work for a big company. They wanted to work corporately, and I never really had that draw. So.
When did you realize that? You think that was some people have it figured out their direction in high school. They have this structured path, whether it's engineer, vets, something that has a pathway. Did you, when you were that age, what were you?
I was one of those, I was fairly smart in school, but I wasn't very focused. I literally in high school, every semester, the vice principal would sit me down and make sure to set me up with my classes so that I would actually have what it takes to go to university. He just knew that I probably, if left to myself, wouldn't do that. So I was always, encouraged, and I think people always saw that I was, despite the fact that sometimes I was acting like an idiot, I was, a little bit smarter than I was letting on. So I was always just lucky enough to have people like that in my life that kind of it's like bowling when you have the gutters have the bumpers on to kind of help me kind of go straight. And so, I never really put a lot of thought into what I wanted to be, but I was always very independent minded and always trying new things. So in university, for example, I was a nerd in terms of the president of the Marketing Association at U of A for a year, and always doing sort of side projects wherever I could. And so just those independent things where I got to be creative and imagine what if we did this? What if we did this? And that just turned into kind of what I do for a living. So you just kind of, the nice thing with being young is that you if you can continue to live like a student, you have no frame of reference in terms of I need to make this much money. I need to make this much money. So as long as I was happy doing what I was doing creatively, I was okay living like a student for a few years after university. So, and then, me and my business partner, Bill, we just, we would just experiment with things and different types of festivals and stuff like that. And was, had fun along the way. So that creativity and in business school, were you thinking that you were going to do your own thing? Were you
as you're moving through those courses and like getting this degree, did you get a degree? Did you finish?
Yeah, I got.
I feel like you might be
I'm alumni at U of A. Yeah.
I thought you could be the wild card that started but didn't finish.
Yeah, no. It probably took me longer, and I should have, like, technically I should probably be a doctor for how many years it took me.
You were there? You were camping out?
It wasn't quite that much. But yeah, I did finish. One of the things that I took away from business school was, like, for example, the prof would say, you have to create a website. That to me never meant to me that I needed to build a website. It meant that I needed to have a website built. And so that's the way I always approached it is, okay, well, who can I get to build me a website? Who can I get? So I guess in that sense, everything was always collaborative to me. It's kind of like, okay, like what is, well, this guy's really good at that. So I was always, yeah, so I don't know. I just, I was always trying to, I guess, take a different approach. And like, I was never, like my wife, for example, she's corporate and she loves it. So just some people have that mindset and I never did.
And yeah. Did you know coming out that you wanted to do your own thing? Did you have a firm idea what that actually looked like?
No. So I worked, when I was going to U of A, I worked for Molson and I really loved, the team. They were really good people. I just knew that I couldn't, necessarily be a rep for a living like myself. It was, it was, maybe I'm not that much of a people person. Like, I don't really know, but it just seemed like something, but I love the industry. So I was always thinking of a way of how could I be in the beer industry on some level. And then when I was in university, I always, I did do help out with some concerts and stuff like that. So I had this idea of like doing event type things and maybe industry adjacent to the beer industry, if that makes sense. Like still get to hang out with these people and share their stories, because I just think there's a lot of cool people in the industry without necessarily being in it on a daily basis, if that makes sense.
So what was it about like work with Molson that actually had you interested or engaged in that job and the industry?
Well, it's interesting because back then so Edmonton still had the Molson House, which is, if I remember being in there one time and just as I'm walking around realizing, this is where Wayne Gretzky had his press conference when he got traded to LA. And there's just so much history in that. And anytime we would ever do a media event, the media from Edmonton would always be there. Without exception, it almost felt like daily there was some excuse to get together and kind of hang out. And I just loved how it brought the community together. It was just, there was always something fun, and no one was ever upset hanging out at the Molson House, you know what I mean? So I just have always loved that about the beer industry is, the people that make up the beer industry typically really care about what they do. Yeah. They're not necessarily driven first and foremost by money, although, I think it's a good motivator. Like hopefully you should be, at least have an idea of how to make good money, but that's not their primary motivation. I just find the people in the industry really, really good. And that was the case back then. They really cared about their product. They really cared about, the people that work there as far, like, I sincerely felt that. And so, yeah, the industry just always really excited me.
Did you, your personality, like, I know you now, back then, what kind of like outgoing in group environments or, like being confident, not loud? Like, how did you fit in? How did you fit into those environments?
I was probably loud. I was probably obnoxiously loud, but I find myself, like, I'm an introvert in that, like, I've had this conversation with a lot of people. Like, I'm an introvert because being in social settings depletes my energy as opposed to, so I can be in settings, in public settings, and I do truly enjoy them, but I also enjoy like my quiet time by myself. So back then I was I would describe myself as, I was probably seen as an extrovert, I would imagine. But it just takes me a long time to recharge. But I don't know how I would describe myself. I never necessarily felt like I fit into the mold of that corporate kind of thing. And I guess I also never enjoyed hierarchy. I always enjoyed people, if you're good at something and this person's good at something, like collaboration to me is so much more fun, and it doesn't matter to me if you're new to the industry or if you've been there for 30 years. It's like, I just love when you can get people together that just really, give a shit and they care, and seeing what happens with that. And so I think maybe that was another reason why corporately I didn't quite fit in, was because I was too impatient with like, well, I have ideas that I want to implement now, so.
And then you could probably see it being like a smart person. You could see the levels that you needed to climb to actually get to a decision-making point.
Yeah.
And he's like, why?
Well, and then you have to dance and you have to play the game, and some people like that, and I never was like that, and I don't know where that comes from, but like my dad was always, like, as far as I can remember, always an entrepreneur and always kind of doing his own thing. So I think I probably looked up to that a little bit as well.
What was he doing?
Actually, it's funny. So he used to have a business in Red Deer called the Kondrat Wholesale Distributors, which is where Troubled Monk is in Red Deer now. So that's like my earliest memory. And then when he moved to Calgary, oil and gas, so like seismic in the early 80s, I think the government was incentivizing people to kind of shoot seismic across Alberta, and then just from there, kind of oil and gas. And so there was always kind of like, how it is, like oil and gas, there's the ups and downs, right? So we kind of rode those waves as kids, but for whatever reason, it kind of excited me that, you can kind of choose your own adventure in some degree, right?
Took the words out of my mouth.
Yeah.
Do you think it was just, you learn things just by being in those atmospheres? Like watching and just like experiencing these things versus, I'm guessing nobody sat you down and said, the idea of being an entrepreneur looks like this, right?
Yeah. No one sat me down. Like I don't think, and I like saying back then, maybe kids still don't have those conversations with their parents, but there wasn't, for me anyway, there wasn't necessarily any structure or any, like, in terms of like there was no conversations like that. And I think my dad had more of those conversations with like my older siblings. I think maybe by the fifth, he's like, fuck it, this guy's...
Good luck, kid.
Yeah, exactly. The conversations never went very well, so what's the point of having them? But I almost to a fault, I was kind of flying by the seat of my pants. Like I wish I would have had a little bit more structure, probably looking back in hindsight. But even like, in today, like it's always been hard for me to like put together a consistent week of like, like being at the office for X amount of hours and stuff like that. So,
you kind of led me right to this question, but with your kids, the idea of like you grew up without those conversations.
Yeah.
Would you go down that path? Is there an opportunity to either educate or shine a light on the idea of being an entrepreneur with your kids, or is it just kind of left?
And I don't know. Like my one daughter, my oldest daughter, is very much like my wife, which is a good thing, and my youngest is, I guess, more like me. I think for me, I just, and I'm not perfect in any area of my life, but what I would like to do for my kids is more so just lead by, so show them through example, and that's either going to inspire them or going to make them run for the hills. But everything that I do, especially in my life now, is I want it to be authentic. I want it to be real, and if my kids are inspired by that, and also like I do make mistakes. I make mistakes every day. My team is probably mad at me as often as they're happy with me. But I think there's a level of authenticity, and we've always had our philosophy has always been to have a strong foundation and be real. So it's every company that I've built is, I feel like authenticity is very, very important. And so with my kids, it's the same thing. It's, it's okay to make mistakes, but, find something that you're passionate in. I would never tell my kids what they should be. But but when you decide you're going to be something, try to, do the best that you can, and really, really give a shit about, about doing it. And so it's just cool watching kids, because you couldn't, like, in my mind, with my kids, I know that they're going to just do, whatever. So all I can do is be the example of, with what I've chosen to do, I do it with a lot of passion, and I love what I do. And so whatever they choose to do, just take that passion into it. And then, because then as a dad, it's so much fun to watch, right? It's like, so yeah, I don't know if that's a philosophy, but it's how we live.
No, it's interesting, right? Because I think I grew up in an environment where it's just more like, it was just cues, like the unsaid things were the things that made more of an impact on my life.
Yeah.
It was never these like sit down breakthrough moments. It was just like watching and listening, just kind of put me on a path.
Totally. And I mean, that's really, like, you can talk it, like, whatever, till you're blue in the face, I guess, whatever. But, kids, they observe. And so like, if they're not going to listen to what you say, they're going to listen to what you do. And I think that's the one thing with, I think maybe we know that more than, our parents did, but, they see us and they observe us, and that's what they're influenced by, for sure.
So take it back to Molson. So you decided to leave there, or how did that look? So, or you graduated, leave there? Or like, where did it fit? My idea was always to just be like, move back to Calgary after I graduated. And like, when I was going to school at U of A, for whatever reason, that was just what I feel like that's what people did. Like they graduated from business school at U of A, and then they moved to Calgary. And so that was my biggest thing. And I didn't know, and then, but you're naive, right? You think, oh, like I could go get a job wherever, like, I'm a hot commodity. So you don't realize that it's going to be a challenge, right? To get, a proper job. So I worked downtown for I probably took like 4 months to get a job. And then I probably worked downtown for like 6 months. And then I was just like, okay. What were you doing?
Oil and gas. I was in sales, and wicked team again, like just a really, really good group of people. We had a ton of fun, but it just, I don't know. It was never like, I couldn't get my head around, I would take the C train to work every day, and I would just observe people, and it's like, you could just tell, like, that guy has been doing that for 30 years. Like, I just knew that he was standing there reading the paper, and had been doing that for years. And I just thought, I can't see myself doing that, And so then, like, to my point earlier is, I wasn't making very much money. So I'm like, okay, well, I could do my own thing and make about the same amount of money, maybe less, but like, you know what I mean? It was still like, I didn't have a family. I didn't have anything to like, that I needed to support. So I always felt if I was going to do it, that like the earlier in my life, the better. I really commend people who become entrepreneurs and stuff later on in life, but I don't think if I didn't make that choice then, I think it would have been it was like a fork in the road, right? It's like now or never. So
interesting you say that, like looking at people. So I had a couple experiences working downtown, and I felt the same thing. I was watching people. I was watching what they were wearing specifically. Even before I got a job downtown, like I had to take a bus downtown to go to Mary's. So I'd take a bus all the way to like First Street, and then either walk or catch a train and go to Mary's. And I always remember watching every day, the same person gets on the bus wearing a black suit or a gray suit, holding a briefcase. And I was just like, I don't like being on the bus right now as a high school kid. Yeah. I was like, this feels like just feels odd.
It feels odd. But some people love it. Like my wife, and she's such a good, she loves corporate, and she's so good at it, and she's so smart, and she enjoys her team. And I remember when she was on mat leave, and I was trying to, help her, like almost like start her own company, and trying to give her options so that she wouldn't have to go back downtown and work corporately. And then it occurred to me one day that she wanted to, and I was just like, oh shit! I thought I was trying to save her, and I'm like, I didn't realize that. I thought that was like what people did, in a pinch. But the thing is there's some people that absolutely love that, and that's awesome. I just, for whatever reason, was never a person that did. So,
dude, I have nightmares of my first downtown job. You had to wear a collar.
Yeah.
I don't know. I was like 19 maybe. Yeah. So you buy these shitty khaki pants, these like oversized golf. This is like in the mid 90s.
Yeah.
Giant golf shirts that look ridiculous.
Yeah.
You have like one pair of pants and 5 shirts, and you just repeat them. And it felt so uncomfortable being in that environment.
Yeah, I had to wear a suit and tie, and I could never wear my tie. So my boss would always come in and jokingly be like, "Where's your tie?" And I'd be like, "It's hanging up." Like, I'll go, if I have to go somewhere, I'll put it on. But why do I have to wear it when I'm in my office? And I just remember running into him years later, and he wasn't wearing a tie. I'm like, "Hey, where's your tie?" And he laughed. But and even just, I remember going there on like a Friday afternoon, going to my office, and I was grabbing something, and the secretary looked at me and was like, "Oh, you own jeans?" Like she had never seen me in a suit. And I'm like, "Oh man, this is so not who I am," But like I said, like still really good people. So I can never really put my finger on, I think back to my experience with Molson and then my experience downtown. I always really did enjoy the people that I worked with. I could never get motivated to do that like structure for some reason.
I'm like, dude, this is the cool thing about these shows, because I felt the same way.
Yeah.
But not a lot of people felt like that.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, I think a lot of people, they need that external structure put onto them, right?
Yeah.
So it's good.
So what happens? You're there for like 4 or 6 months, and what happens?
So then my current business partner, so I've 2 others, but Bill we've been business partners basically since in around that time, I'll say. So we used to throw kind of small events when I was still working downtown. I was kind of like, okay, well, something's got to give here. Either I'm going to stop doing those things or I'm going to stop working downtown. So I decided to quit my job. And so from there we would do just, because it's funny, I would call us event coordinators, but we weren't really like your typical, like if someone would have had us like do a corporate event or like a wedding, it would have been like the worst experience in the world. So we had like a certain niche that we didn't quite know what that niche was yet. But what we gravitated towards was bigger events. And so, like I said, it was in around then that we started working on the first Main Street Sunfest in Inglewood. We used to do an event downtown in the Devonian Gardens called Festivus. So if you've ever watched Seinfeld, so for whatever reason, we just thought that name was funny from the episode. And that was a food and wine show, food and wine and beer and stuff like that. And so we just had some really fun restaurants involved and some really cool agencies. And from that, someone said, you guys, our friend Vern, remember saying to us, like, there's no beer festivals. Like, why don't you guys do a beer festival? And so that was when, I was already working alongside with, some really good breweries. Big Rock being one of them. Wild Rose was here in town. Grizzly Paw was around back then. So it was like, oh, cool. Like, we could maybe do something to specifically showcase like the breweries. And so in 2004, we started working on our first, what we called the Calgary International Beer Fest. We still call it that, but mostly because back then that's what was sexy, was international beers coming in. We didn't quite have a robust craft beer scene, I would say. So
what year is this ish?
2005.
Good.
2004, 2005. So so that was and then from there I actually kind of did a 180. I have an older brother who called me right after the festival was, like, the first beer festival was done, and he was made the suggestion that we should buy a sports store in Cochrane, and which is kind of like out of left field, but growing up playing hockey and I thought it might be kind of a neat idea, so we did that, and I think it's one of the reasons why I'm just such a supporter of small businesses, is because, that really taught me how hard it is to run a small business. And people just think, if you own a business that you must be rich, and we go from these struggling entrepreneurs, and then as soon as, God forbid, someone makes money, now they're greedy business people. And I'm just like, to me, it's like, there's almost everybody's either struggling or just barely making it. And, so to me, I always knew that, I wanted to, I guess, share the stories of entrepreneurs and small business owners, because, what they're doing doesn't necessarily make sense from a financial perspective. They're trying to articulate an idea that they have, and, that they there's more struggle than there is, kind of wins on a daily basis. And so, for me, just being able to do the festivals is such a good opportunity to connect people directly with the people, whether it's small breweries, distilleries, chefs, restaurant managers, owners, just connecting people and getting to know who these people are, because, they're very passionate people, and they're doing it first and foremost for the passion. They're certainly not doing it for the money. And I learned that, I will say, the hard way by owning the sports store, because it was 7 days a week, and there was no, and, it was just a struggle to keep the doors open, the lights on, kind of thing, And so when I see people succeeding in retail, I just think, slow clap, good for you, because that is not easy.
What was that conversation like with your brother when he called you to do this? It's one of those, you immediately,
you look back, you think, if I didn't answer the phone on that day. No. Yeah, it was just because it was one of those conversations we had probably years ago. Growing up playing hockey in, small city in Alberta, it's, that's one of those things oh, how cool would that be to own a store and be able to be in that environment all the time, right? Talking to people who are playing sports and playing hockey every day and stuff. So it seemed like kind of a natural fit. I have a business degree at the time, right? So I felt like I could bring something to the table that way. Grew up playing hockey, so it's kind of combining all the things. So at the time, it made a lot of sense to me. Yeah.
What did you really learn there? Besides the appreciation and respect for small business owners, what did you figure out on the out of that?
Well, I learned that I struggle with that structure of having to have the door open at this time, and I don't know if that makes me sound like I have ADD or whatever, but it's just I struggled with that consistency. There was no off button, we were open 7 days a week, everybody had my phone number, and I don't say that in a bad way. It's just there's burnout in that, you know what I mean? And so, but what I loved is I loved the people. So, getting to sit and have a beer with, some of the staff after work, and, just getting to know them as they, because a lot of times, they were young kids, let's say teenagers when they started, and, in university by the time they would have left. And so you get to kind of see them grow up. And so I really enjoyed that. And then just a lot of the customers that would come in, you get to know them on a very personal level, and you get to see their kids grow up. And so there's a lot of fun in that as well, right? But yeah, it's a grind in that it's, like I said, retail is typically 7 days a week, and it's hard to get, proper people in place to kind of replace yourself on those days, right? And I remember people coming in, sometimes they'd give us crap for being open on Sundays, and it's just well, when you're paying $40 a square foot, we're not open on Sundays because we want to be, you know what I mean? We're open because we got to pay the bills and stuff. So, but again, the people that I met, I keep in touch with a lot of them, that I met back then, and just, still think about, the people that used to come in as regulars. I'm lucky enough, to know some people in the beer industry that were kids that came into the shop back then. So definitely kept some of the relationships, but again, just a total shout out to people that are able to succeed in retail. People talk about supporting local. I don't think people truly understand how absolutely important that is. They're supporting people that are like they truly need us to, right?
Yep.
So yeah.
So my good friend Rob, Turkey and Pistols, has a music and apparel shop out in Bright Creek.
I've been there many times.
So it's like 7 days a week. So as you're telling this story, I'm watching Rob build this business out there 7 days a week, and it's, it from the outside it looks exhausting.
And it is, and even though he's combining his passions, right? It's still tiring. It's still, and like I said, so he's a great example of someone who is. He has an idea in his head and he's trying to articulate it. And that's what entrepreneurs do. And so he's passionate, like, and he's so talented. So, and like I have these conversations where people are like, well, you can buy a record online and it's cheaper than going out there. And it's just like, yeah, but he's curated such a cool experience. Like, you got to go and check him out. And like his t-shirts are awesome and hilarious and just like, and so, supporting those local people that are doing cool things, like Rob's a great example.
And it's funny because that is the choice. Like when we say support local, people don't really understand that it's not going on Amazon. It's literally paying for the gas, spending the extra time to get where you need to go to buy something. That's what supporting means. Not just like not once a year this like token visit. It's like when you have a decision of either big box or this, you got to like put in the time and effort to go do that. Yeah,
totally. Well, and he's in Bright Creek, so you can combine that with going for a hike. My kids, I'll just be like, well, we'll stop at the candy store right beside as well. So but yeah, and what they're doing is so cool. Like we when you go into a neighborhood and there's no vibe, that's why. It's because it's like we think, well, okay, everybody should support local. I won't. I'll go here. But if everyone else does, then what's the difference? It's like and we're all guilty of it. We all do the Walmart thing and we all do the Amazon thing. So it's taking, really being conscious and really intentional with trying to do it whenever we possibly can.
So how long were you at the sports store? How long did the sports store exist?
So it existed with me until I want to say 2011, 2012. So basically once I had my first daughter, let's just blame my daughter. She's not here. No. When it was as if I had clarity, with what I wanted to do and with what I did not want to do. And, at that point, it had never really bothered me to be working 7 days a week.
Like for 6 years, right?
Yeah. So 2005 we started it because it was right after the first beer festival, and then 2011. So like 6, maybe almost 7 years, and then. But yeah, as soon as I had my first daughter, I'm like, I don't know if I can do this. Like, I don't want to be away from my daughter like that much. I want to hang out with her. I want to be able to do things. And so, and at that point too, I had been, because I kind of took a few years where I wasn't very active in the beer festival. And then when I started getting back to it, I had a real vision for what I wanted the beer festivals to be. And so,
were they going on while you had the sports store?
Yeah. So Bill kind of kept the lights on and did a great job growing it. The Calgary International Beer Fest. And so when I got more heavily involved again, probably in, I want to say 2008, 2009. So there's a few years where I was very much in the back burner. When I got back into it, and my daughter was born, I had more of a vision for what I could do with the festivals, and where I wanted to take that. And so for me, it was more of I basically said I can't do the store anymore. I was burnt out mentally, physically, but I had a real vision for what I felt like we could do with the beer festivals. And so that was kind of when we turned it into Alberta Beer Festivals and had an idea of growing, going to Edmonton, doing these sort of things. I always loved the idea of doing a festival in Edmonton because I knew that Calgary and Edmonton are so different, and I knew that we had to approach it differently. So it was exciting to kind of go back to Edmonton and visit all my old friends and, go to the university and just kind of, so yeah, it was exciting.
So when you come back at it kind of full time with a vision, does your partner just on board with you right away? Was he like aligned with you that he could kind of see what you were seeing?
Well, me and Bill have always been, we're, I would say, an interesting couple because like it's just like being a married couple in a way, because we disagree a lot and we've always been aligned somehow, and so we've always trusted each other on some level as to like what the overall vision could be. And so, and I think I always want to be like the person that goes like all in on something. And so if, with the store, I wanted to be the person that was there every day. With the festivals, as soon as I have an idea, it's like I want to be the person who's in Edmonton, like on the ground, getting this organized. And so that was my kind of, I think my idea to him was, let's do something in Edmonton, but I'll do most of the legwork, right? And I'll kind of see this. And so, and he was supportive of that because obviously we have to take, some of the, time and energy that would go into Calgary to kind of divide it. So for whatever reason, like I said, like we've always agreed on, I think, the greater vision. We disagree on the day-to-day sometimes and stuff like that, but we've always kind of had each other's back on what we want Alberta Beer Festivals to be, or what we know it could be. Yeah.
So the growth from when you started, like when you launched the first festival to like where it is now-ish,
yeah.
Could you have seen what the industry was going to do? Like, could you have, I don't know who attended or what kind of vendors you had the first one to like whatever, 140 some odd breweries now in the province? Like,
we couldn't, no, I don't think we could have seen, like, I remember asking someone the first year that we were doing a beer festival, because I was doing like odd jobs and stuff like that at the time. So I was helping a guy frame.
Just to supplement.
To kind of make ends meet, and just, cause we were really just experimenting with like different festivals and stuff like that and trying to see what would stick. So, I remember I was driving in a truck with this guy and we were framing some condos, and I said, what do you think about doing a beer festival? Like, we're thinking we might do a beer festival. And he's just like, I don't even understand like what that means. He's like, I don't even understand the question. Like there's not enough beer. Like in his mind, there's like Molson Canadian Kokanee. He's like, how does that make a festival? So, from that point, it's kind of like, could I have foreseen that where it to where it is? Like, no, but I knew that there was enough to do a festival. And then once you get that, and you see, okay, how do the restaurants interact with the breweries? And back then there was a lot of agencies, and an agency would have, a huge portfolio of beer and wine and spirits and stuff like that. So back then it was working more with agencies and the odd brewery, and now it's kind of flipped where you're dealing with a lot of individual breweries and just a few agencies. But I know I don't think I could have imagined that it would be where it was as a community, like a local community with so many different breweries and stuff like that. Like it's really cool to have been able to just watch that kind of unfold.
Yeah, from like day one.
Yeah,
like early days, right?
Early days, but the biggest thing is if we go back to the beginning of sort of the craft beer in Alberta, which is, I hope I'm not missing anybody, but really I'm going to say Big Rock is obviously big in that, Alley Cat, and then Brewster's has always been big. And to some degree, I think Brewster's has been underrated in terms of their impact on the industry. But Big Rock, they kind of created what is still today the essence of the beer culture in Alberta. And so, Alistair Smart, who, I was lucky enough to meet years ago, and he's just, he was essentially the first salesperson in Big Rock. And so he taught and before he was there, he was in the retail business. He was at Le Chateau and I think Reitman's, like, which you would never think when you meet him. And then before that, he was I think a police officer in England. Like, he must be 300 years old by now, because he's had so many like careers, you know. But he was the first sales rep for Big Rock, and he'll say that he was the second, but effectively he was the first. And so he taught everybody who came in after him his philosophies. And so, you know, the Tom Stewarts who I got to meet, and the Craig Surretts, they all learned from him, and then they continued to teach others. So really the foundation of the beer culture in Alberta comes from Big Rock, and comes from, I would say, in my opinion, specifically Alistair Smart. So it's really cool that so I couldn't have foreseen what was happening, but when you look at what it is now and where it came from, it still has that like really amazing foundation of community that is so important to Alistair still. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, he's cool.
It's amazing that you can tie it back to like one human, because you've been a part of it for a long time, so you can. Oh man, but like, he's so passionate. If you ever go, like, one of Alistair's favorite places to eat is the Danish Canadian Club, and anytime he brings anybody there, especially for the first time, he'll make sure that they are sitting in. So all the chairs are named, and so he'll make sure he gets there ahead of time, and he moves the chairs around so that you'll sit in Ed McNally's, so the founder of Big Rock, you'll sit in Ed McNally's chair. So then he'll tell you the whole story, the origin story of Big Rock. And then he'll say, and somewhere in this room, Ed McNally's chair. And then inevitably you look and you're like, I'm in his chair. And it's just like, he curated the whole thing, but he's still that proud of that company. Right. So yeah, it's cool. And that has just, I just believe that that's kind of carried over, and that's been like, that was the beginning of it. So it's cool when you're in an industry where the foundation was so strong and people just really cared and still do. Yeah. Yeah. I'd love to get into the podcasting with you. You've been doing it for so long.
Yeah.
And I'd love to know the why. Mm-hmm. That's kind of where that's where I'd love to know why you started it. And I'd love to just hear that, like, what drove you there? And give me some timelines too.
Yeah. So why did I do it? So when I was, like, most of what I did on a daily basis was very much one-on-one with people, or I'd be in my office, imagining what the floor plan was going to be for the festival. And so, and even still, like, what I do is often, like, I'll meet with people one-on-one, I'll get their feedback, and I'll try to incorporate it into, like, what the greater vision is for, like, a festival or something like that. And so, I'll say that there's two reasons I started. One is I wanted to kind of branch out. I wanted to just challenge myself a little bit, right? And as opposed to, just doing the one-on-ones, I wanted to kind of create or learn what my voice was and learn how to articulate myself and express who I was. And the other reason was that in my meetings, I get to meet so many cool people. And, whether it was, people from the beer scene or, just like, it doesn't matter. Like, just sitting down with these people, and they had so many cool stories. And I thought, man, like, I'd just be vibrating, or I'd have like goosebumps. And I'm like, how do I share these stories? Like these people have such, their visions and what they want to do. And I wanted to help them as much as we could through the festivals, but I wanted to just share their stories. And so that's what I did. So I was talking to my friend Jim Button at the time, and I remember going for coffee with him, and he was doing a blog to talk about his journey. He was battling cancer at the time, and so his voice, how he articulated his voice, was through his blog. And he's for him, he said, took him a long time to even learn like his writing style, because everybody's different, right? With how they, and so for me, I wanted to, so he inspired me. He did it through blogging. I wanted to do it through podcasting, is kind of find my voice and be able to express who I am while still sharing stories from people that I got to meet all the time. And I called it Let's Meet for a Beer because that's basically how I, like, anytime I was like, okay, well, let's meet for a beer and we'll go through this or we'll go through this. But, meeting for beer is the same as, going for a coffee, or, people that, chefs will say like breaking bread together. It's like, it's just saying, let's just spend time together and let's talk about things, So if someone says, hey, let's meet for a beer, what they're saying is they value taking an hour out of their life to hang with you. You know what I mean? So it's cool.
What year did you start that one?
I would have started that in, I want to say like 20, well, okay, just wait. So 20...
Pre-COVID?
Yeah, so 2018, 2019 kind of thing. Yeah, pre-COVID, because I remember I had like my 50th right before COVID, because JD and Tom Stewart, so Tom Stewart from Village and then JD from CJ92, we all did it together. And
sounds fun.
Yeah, it was fun. I initially asked Tom to do it, and then I realized that Tom, as much as I love him, was going to put zero effort in preparing for it. So I'm like, okay, JD will actually do a proper job. So yeah, we all sat around and just kind of chatted about the state of the industry, we'll say, but not knowing that COVID was kind of looming, and then I did probably 40 or 50 with JD over the first few months of COVID, because we would almost do one daily, with the understanding that, we're flattening the curve and in 12 days or 14, whatever it was. So eventually we thought, okay, well, we'll do 10, we'll do 20. And then we got to probably 40 or 50 and we're like, okay, we actually should, he has a day job, right? So yeah, but yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Do you, when you're 300-400 in, whatever the number is, you probably know exactly what it is. Were you prepared for what you're going to get from it, what you were going to learn from it, and the experiences that you were going to create?
So I was making this analogy the other day, is, when you, I don't know if you've ever done anything like let's say I don't know how to play guitar, but like mountain biking. For me, mountain biking, I always, when I'm mountain biking, I would always suffer through it, and it always just sucked, and I just never got better. And then one day I felt like I was actually a good mountain biker. And but for 4 years before that, I never felt good. I always felt like, of all the people that we were with, I was the slowest. I was the one struggling. And then one day I just felt like, oh, okay, I can do this. And I feel the same with podcasting. I kind of suffer through it, because I still get nervous. I still chew my nails before a podcast. But then one day, just a month ago, I was up early in the morning and I was preparing for a podcast, and I just felt really good. And I was just like, oh, this is just it was that same feeling of okay, I think I can get there. I think so I'm still nervous, and I still literally do chew my nails before, and I have to go through a process where I'm actually meditating and stuff before I do my thing. But I feel like I can kind of have a vision for actually, where I want to go now. But I never started it with an intention of where do I want to go or what do I want to do. It was just, I want to talk to people that I find really inspiring, and I want to learn how to articulate myself authentically. And those were my only two things. And so I'm kind of stumbling through it, and I finally feel now I'm at that point where I'm okay, I think I can be reasonably good at this, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I find that whole thread really interesting, because it's so let's say, run this idea with me. So somebody wants to start a podcast in Calgary. They look at a character like you that's deep into it.
Yeah.
And they're instantly thinking, how is he doing it? How'd he get there? And so they're okay, I'm going to try. and they try for 4, they try for 7, they get to 10 and they shut it down.
Yeah.
I think what's very fascinating about the body work you've put in is like, it's straight work.
Yeah.
Like to hone a craft, it's just work. It's not glamorous.
When you have to know that you don't start with the answer. Like, so for me, for example, my iterations are let's meet for a beer, and then the Kondrat podcast. And then I'm like, you know what? I want to split it into like basically the two sides of my brain. So then I went, let's call it, let's meet for a beer again and Explore 84. And so, you know, a lot of people would say, well, that's the wrong way to do it. And it probably is, but it depends why you're doing it. So for me, I was doing it because I had an idea that I wanted to articulate. And so for me, kind of going down this path and hitting a dead end and then coming back and then going down this path, and that's all part of the process. So I don't go into it saying I know exactly what I'm doing and now I just have to, like, you know, A, B, C, D to get there. I go in it saying this is why I'm doing it. I just don't know how I'm going to do it, and I'm okay with, you know, messing up along the way. And the nice thing about doing festivals is when you mess things up, you're doing it very publicly. And so you get used to looking like an idiot in front of a lot of people. Not to say that it ever gets easy, but you understand. And so I think with anything, if you're going to have the courage to, whether it's a podcast or whether it's starting your own business, there's that element of you need to be able to be vulnerable and be comfortable with that and know that you are going to screw up. Be as prepared as you can be, but even in that, you will be messing up constantly because you're doing something you don't know what it is.
There's
right?
no blueprint for it.
Yeah.
That you've said it a couple of times, just like leading with. You're very thoughtful with what you're leading, like your why you're going to do something. You're very thoughtful with it. It's like, you know, I'm satisfying something internally, or I'm just trying something, versus looking for the fame or the glamour behind all these ideas.
Right.
I think leading with that approach is the thing that lets you put in all the work to actually pull these things off. Yeah.
And I think if you are, I just think like that's what being an entrepreneur is, or that's what being, you know, if you like, I think that entrepreneurs and being an entrepreneur is a form of being an artist in a way, because you're trying to articulate something that's in your mind, right? You're trying to put it out there. And so if you're kind of authentic to that, then, you know, you'll figure out the how, right? But like, so as long as your why is always, and you should always be clarifying the why, because so for me, sometimes I have days where I'm just like, what am I doing? Like, why am I doing this? And so for me, those are days where I just step back and I need to like reset. But, that's what life is all about, is just, is that journey, right? That's the most fun, because if you're just doing things for, you know, whatever, if you've ever had a nice car, if you've ever had nice clothes, if you've ever had something nice, the happiness that those things give you is like very fleeting, right? So, it's cool to have all that stuff, but like, that's not like why we're put on this earth. You know what I mean? So, to kind of articulate what is going on in our head and kind of manifest that, I guess, is, I think, the reason that we exist. So it's fun.
It takes courage to do it, doesn't it?
It does take, yeah, for sure. It does. Yeah.
Like, because of, you know, someone from the outside, like me, watching what you're doing and trying to figure out why you're making these moves. Like, it takes courage to put yourself out there and have a voice, and be a leader, right? It can be an intimidating process.
Well, and it's interesting though, because I don't necessarily think that, you know, putting yourself out there, I don't think people do it to be leaders, right? I don't think that, like, so it's, you know, it's like a chef. You know, I'm fascinated by chefs, and because I've never worked in a kitchen, and I just see what they do, like, is so stressful, and so, but there's such a passion there, right? And so I don't know that they start with the idea that I'm going to be, you know,
Ramsay
celebrity chef, or I'm going to be this. They're just trying to articulate something. They're trying to express something. And, you know, sometimes it gets to that point, but I don't think they ever start with that in mind. Right. And so, and that's the same thing, like in business, it's just so much fun getting to work with people that are passionate about what they do. And going back to what I said like early in the conversation, that's why it should never matter if someone's only been there for a month or for 30 years. If you are with people that give a shit, this level of energy that's there is just like so fun, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Then you got to be confident enough to actually accept that energy.
Yeah.
To be okay with not being the smartest guy in the room that has all the answers. Like you got to like push that aside and just.
Oh, big time. Yeah. I think once you, that's probably the biggest thing that, that a person can do is like stop even trying to have all the answers. Like, cause you don't. So like, and then because if you can make space for other people who are good at what they do, they have answers that you need and vice versa. And so to be in that collaborative space, and I think that's a lot of pressure that people put on themselves when they first start a business, is they think that they're supposed to have all the answers and they're supposed to be the leader who knows everything. And just like, no one's asking you to know everything. Like, your job is to try to put all the pieces together so that collectively we have the answers, but your job isn't to have all the answers yourself, right? And then once you know that, it kind of takes the pressure off a little bit and you can kind of breathe a little bit and hopefully have fun in the process.
Explore 84. I want you to just run through this one for me because there's something around the I call it mental fitness. There's something, it's very interesting to me just watching from the outside. So just run through what part of your brain turned this on and why you did it?
So for me, I did it because I was, I don't know, like probably around like say 8 years ago, I wasn't necessarily like angry with the world, but I was kind of like, okay. I felt like I had finally been somewhat successful. Like I went years of being, an entrepreneur with having very limited success, right? Not a great success with the sports store. Me and Bill had tried a whole bunch of different festivals and, again, to varying degrees of success, but not. So when I finally, here I find myself, I'm married, I have kids, I have 2 kids. We had a house, we had vehicles, we have, and like, I wasn't happy myself for some reason. Like, and so for me, I really needed to like figure out why that was, right? Wasn't it supposed to be that when we finally, got a nice vehicle or something, like why, like, wasn't that supposed to be what we were doing this all for? And wasn't that supposed to make me like happy? And like, and it just didn't, right? And so like, no matter what I would ever accumulate, it didn't do anything for me. And I found myself unhappy. And so I really had to focus on that. Okay, why is that? And so for me, what I realized is like through my work, although I love what I do, it's very project based. And so then when I got really focused on a project, basically I would ignore my health. And so I wouldn't be, going to the gym at all. I would ignore my relationship with my wife. I would ignore, I was so single-mindedly focused. And I thought, well, that's not sustainable. Like I'm going to be divorced. I'm going to be, everything that I've worked for is actually going to be gone if I don't figure this out. And so for me, I thought, okay, well, I want to just every day I want to do something like physical for myself so that I can be like, in decent enough shape where I don't end a festival and then look at myself and go like, what the hell just happened, So it started out with that. It was just a physical challenge for myself. What can I do every day to be in reasonably good physical health? And then from there, I realized, okay, well, I'm not challenging myself mentally. And so that was part of why I did the podcast was, well, what can I do to challenge myself in that way to make sure that I'm progressing with my mental health on a daily basis. And then talking to my friend Jim Button and him dealing with his journey, what he said helped him was having that spiritual component. And so, I learned how to meditate and just take time for myself, because I do have like a lot of energy. And so if that energy is misdirected, it's not healthy for me. So I needed to figure out, okay, what are healthy ways that I can expend my energy physically, mentally, and spiritually? And so Explore 84 was it was for me just a checklist of 84 days is 12 weeks. And it was just like, okay, here's 12 weeks of, can I do something physically, mentally, and spiritually every day to just check in and just make sure. So it's running every day, meditating every day, and reading every day. And so, and then, they'll say, well, approximately, let's say 66 to 100 days is how long it takes to create a habit. So I thought, okay, well, 12 weeks is in that kind of time frame. And so what I do is every quarter, I just do a 12-week challenge for myself to just be making sure that I'm checking in. Because the thing about being an entrepreneur is you do it because you hate structure, but then what you realize at a certain point is whether you hate structure or not, you need structure in your life. And so what people like about jobs is that oftentimes a job will give you external structure. Once you're an entrepreneur, you don't have that external structure, so you have to create internal structure. And so that's what it is for me, is just every day, okay, what am I doing to address those components of my life? And then a friend of mine who actually met in Cochrane, we used to play hockey together. He's a chiropractor and he's a doctor, and so we'd go biking together, and he'd ask me like, okay, what are you doing? Like, why do you have this spreadsheet? And what, and so I'd explain it to him. But he started asking a lot, and I'm like, well, why do you care so much? Like, it's just a way of me like staying sane. And he's like, for him, he would see clients and he would say, they'd come in and say, oh, I have a sore neck or I have a sore back, but I don't know why, because I didn't do anything. And he'd be like, well, that's why your body's telling you have to do something, you have to use it. And so what he wanted was, he's like, I want something that I can give to clients that they can just, check off that they've done something. And so what we have been working on together is an app that basically is just a simple way for people to say, okay, what are my goals? Because everybody has different goals, like physically, mentally, and spiritually. So what are my goals? I call them minimum daily habits, and just check them off that you do them every day. And so yeah, we're developing an app to kind of create that community. My whole thing is, I'm not going to tell you what you should do, but I'll support you on your journey to do it, if that makes sense, right? So yeah, it's been a lot of fun, but it's helped me keep my sanity. So,
and then how do you before you figure this out, especially the physical side?
Yeah.
So for me, and I'll give you some context for where I'm going with this. So I figured out, I don't know, 12, 13 years ago, I realized that I was not feeling great. I was kind of unhappy. I had like a shitty, one of those daytime lights at your cubicle?
Yeah.
Those things that you're supposed to get like vitamin D after, like all these things, right? I'm like, I got this seasonal thing that I need more sunlight, and I'm kind of like depressed and not motivated and not firing. But what I figured out was like, it's the fitness piece. Yeah. When I wasn't active, because you go from playing hockey like 7 days a week growing up, then you kind of, you find the bars, that stops. And then that was my thing. So when I figured out that it was like physical fitness was the thing to unlock my brain, then I've been on this path for 13 years. Yeah. When you were like, did you know how important the physical piece was to you, or were you always pretty sure it was the three were connected for you?
No. I wanted it only to be physical. I didn't want it to be. I didn't want to deal with anything else, right? So, and I knew because, I had been same as you. I had been physically like active growing up and stuff like that. So where I got irritated physically was, again, when I would be in the, doing a festival. So I would just be completely ignoring my physical health. And so then I'd be so irritated at myself by the time when I was done, because like, Jesus, now I got to get, like, I know how much it's going to take to get back into proper shape. And then, so you do that, and then another project comes, and now you're just like, so there was just this yo-yo effect. And I thought, well, that's not, because eventually what my fear was is I'm going to be down here. So I'm doing the yo-yo thing. I'm going to be down here and I'm not going to be motivated to go up again. And so what I needed was something that would just let me stay a little bit more consistent. And, you know, whether I should compare myself to a dog or not, I know that when I had my dog, if he got walked every day, he was just better, you know? So it prevents me from chewing on furniture, I guess. Just go for my daily walk or whatever.
So basic.
Yeah. And then, you know, like, and then it's just, once you kind of figure that out, you realize that, okay, that's not, physical health isn't the only, you know, area of your life that needs attention, right? If you're going to be, you know, if you're going to be a tolerable human being at work and like a reasonably good husband, and like, I'm not shooting for the stars here. I just want like someone who can, you know, carry a conversation without, so, but yeah, no, I want it only to be physical. I wish
it's easier that way, right?
Totally.
It's just like put in effort.
Yeah.
It's very singular. And
yeah. But you know, it's so cool. Like, you know, the amount of, you know, doing the podcast and getting to ask questions, and, you know, it really stimulates the mind. And then, you know, just asking people like, hey, what kind of books do you read and stuff like that? You start, you know, reading these books and you start, you know, exploring things that you wouldn't normally have explored. And so once you get kind of go down that road, I'm grateful that I went down the road, but I didn't go willingly. I was like, shit, okay, I got to figure, like I don't want to have to do that, you know what I mean? But it's a lot of fun now, and it's a habit. Like, I mean, every morning it's just like wake up, read for however long, and yeah.
It's not glamorous, right? Like,
no.
It's just these boring routines like put us on a path.
Like right now I'm reading this book that this doctor, we had him on the podcast a while ago, he recommended. It's called Younger Next Year, I want to say. And it's like he's talking about heart rate monitors. And I'm just like, oh fuck. Like I've always laughed. Who needs a heart rate monitor? Like I need one that's like thumbs up if my heart's still going, thumbs down if I'm flatlined.
911.
Like, yeah. So yeah, exactly. So, and then he's like going through this, and I'm like, okay, shit. So you kind of learn things that you wouldn't necessarily do a deep dive in, right? By reading things that other people suggest you, and it makes you, you know, hopefully a little bit more well-rounded. I mean, we all have algorithms on our phone that, you know, if we only listen to what our algorithms tell us that we want, that we're interested in, like, you're a very one-dimensional human being, right? And apparently I like BuzzFeed and National Post. So
simple.
Judge me based on that. But
do you find all this, all the energy and work that you're putting into yourself has allowed you to like find that voice and be able to articulate who you are and kind of what makes you tick?
I think so. I hope so.
Work in progress.
Always a work in progress, but I'm way more confident in. I'm confident in articulating myself, but I would say I'm less likely to be, like, I don't really ever say I know for sure about this, or I know, like, the more I learn and the more I get to do this sort of stuff, the less decisive I am, if that makes sense. Like, it's funny, my one brother, me and him used to fight all the time, and it'd be like, no, you're wrong. This is how it went. And so me and him over like the last few years have become so close, and we never argue because both of us are like, we don't know, you know, his experience and my experience in those situations were so different that there's nothing definitive about it. It's just, he's just expressing his perspective and I'm expressing mine. Whereas that we used to fight about that. Who's right and who's wrong. And to me, that's the wrong question to ask. Nobody's right or wrong per se. It's like, okay, like, are you getting a little bit more clarity from hearing each other's perspectives? But there's no, I'm right, you're wrong. And so that's what I've learned more along the way is I think when I was younger, I would probably sit and have arguments with you and just be like, no, this is the way it went. I find that to be a waste of time. It's conversations where each person kind of learns a little bit and kind of like, oh, okay. That's, to me, is fascinating. Yeah.
This has been a cool one, man.
Yeah.
It's been cool to actually just like, you know, I've known your name for a long time. Jason Jensen, good buddy of mine. He's like, you gotta meet Mark. You gotta meet Mark.
He's a good guy.
So it's fun to actually sit across from you and hear all this. And I yeah, it's been very educational for me. Just
I hope there's something usable in it.
Well, yeah, like you said so many things. I'm like, clip. Yeah. So thanks.
Yeah, of course.
I appreciate it. I end the show with one question. When I say Calgary, where's your head go?
When you say Calgary, where does my head go? My head goes to just like an entrepreneurial hotbed. I think that if people want to be in a city where their ideas are accepted and where you can find a group of people that will help you, realize it. Like I'm sure there's other cities that are as good, but I just feel really lucky to be an entrepreneur in Calgary. So that's where my head goes, is very, open-minded community that wants to see people succeed. And I just think that there's a lot of people in Calgary that are more than happy to help you realize what you are trying to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree, man. It's like, it's like people coming on the show.
Yeah.
It's the exact same thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, sure, I'll like give you an hour and a half of my life because
Yeah.
I barely know you, but yeah, sure, like
Yeah.
you're doing something kind of cool.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
It's the lighting. That's
well,
what, yeah.
Yeah, you just, yeah.
Yeah.
You're going to screenshot this. It'll just be your new profile pic everywhere.
Yeah, totally, 100%.
Thanks for your time.
Yeah, thank you.
I really appreciate it. I think that that exploratory for you actually explaining what that's about.
Yeah.
That was really cool for me to hear because it just, it really resonates with me.
Well, and it's one of those too where I'm just like, my wife's like, how are you going to monetize that? And I'm just like, I'm figuring out the how. I started with the why, you know what I mean? And, but I have a wicked team helping me with it. And so it'll be fun. I actually built the app and then we weren't happy with it. So we're rebuilding it. So that's always a lot of fun. But, hey man, it's all about the journey, right?
That's it. Like you said, like you go down one path, the door closed, you got to go back and.
But what else are we going to do? Like, Jesus, man. Like, what I mean?
Not wear shitty suits.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's what life is all about, is just having fun and figuring shit out.
Yep. Thanks again.
Awesome. Thank you, man.
Yep.